Bright Horizons Parenting Podcast just for ages 0 to 8. Get the advice you need from our own early childhood experts, Rachel Robertson and Claire Goss, and make the most out of every chance to teach, play, and love.
Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Claire. Nice to see you again.
Yes, as always. I feel like that's how we always start our episodes.
Yeah.
We are here to celebrate the 50th episode of our podcast, Teach, Play, Love. I am feeling really proud that this podcast has made it to 50 episodes because not a lot of podcasts do.
Yeah. I was surprised when I heard that it got to 50 because it just feels like good, fun conversations to have. I can't believe how many years have gone by that we've been doing this, but parent education, talking to families about early childhood development and child development and just tips and tricks is one of the best things that we get to do. I know you feel the same way. So in some ways it just flies right by, and 50 feels like you just have to take a second and go, 50? We've talked about 50 different things. How do we even come up with 50 different topics? But we already have 50 more ready to go.
Yes, that's right. So let's just talk a little bit for our listeners about how Teach, Play, Love got started. You were here. I wasn't yet here with you. How did the idea, who came up with, where did the idea come from and how has it changed?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how the idea came up. I think a lot of us, we're all listening to podcasts. And so many people were listening to podcasts as a solution for things, as a way to get information that can fit into your day in a different way. You can listen to it in the car, when you're on a walk. You don't have to be in front of a screen. So there was a realization about the handiness, usefulness of a podcast format. And then I, pre-pandemic, was doing a lot of live family parent education workshops. And two things always happened. Parents said, thank you so much, because now I feel like I can just trust you. There's so much content, so many influencers, so many people with an opinion. I don't know who to listen to. I constantly feel judged. I don't know where to look. I'm just going to listen to what you said. I know it comes from expertise around child development, and this has just helped. I think one of the last parent workshops I did before the pandemic, a parent just said, I don't know if this is inappropriate, but can I hug you? Because I feel like you just made my life so much simpler. So it's that kind of stuff was happening all the time. And then I'd always get a line of parents asking me questions and they were all very similar in the content and topic, and just parents worried that they're not doing it right. And just so much pressure and stress about parenting. And all of them were doing it right. And so this gave us a platform to answer a lot of those really common questions and hopefully reassure parents from our perspective as child development experts, but also as parents that we're perfect either. We're still parents. I'm still a parent, even though my kids are older, still not perfect at it. But I think it was coming together and finding a way to do all those things in a broader platform, and realizing podcasts was the way to do it.
Absolutely. Okay, let's tell our listeners a little bit about our topics, how we come up with them, and why we feel they're important, like how we decide. Like you said, sometimes it's hard to believe that we've come up with 50 topics, but I actually already have like 100 more ideas. So yeah. How do we decide? I can answer this one a little bit. I think for me, so now when I joined the podcast, I think it was maybe halfway through. I can't actually remember which episode was my first. Our previous host was Ruth Fedino, who trained me up before she retired. And she taught me a lot in the small time that we overlapped. She taught me a lot about this podcast, but also how to pay attention to families, which I think is something that I had kind of been doing recreationally since I went into teaching and child development almost 20 years ago. But I started really paying attention when I would do a workshop or I would have a conversation with a family after an event, same as you, about what kind of common themes am I seeing here? It feels very personal when you're struggling with something as a parent. It feels like I must be the only person who's got this problem. And I've heard, in your most vulnerable moments, you're thinking there's something wrong with my kid. There's something wrong with me. I don't know what I'm doing. So when you see the same themes coming up over and over again for families, the topics kind of reveal themselves to you.
Yeah. And I think it's like you and I have this even a level of responsibility of saying it's okay. Like we have all the knowledge about brain development and developmentally appropriate practices, and yet we still see where we made mistakes. I have the benefit of coming out on the other side, so I can see a little bit of like, oh, why did I spend so much time worrying about that? That turned out to be no big deal.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like we want to be people's village because we know it's hard, and even more now, we know people don't have those social networks, and you need that, and everyone deserve that. So I do the same thing. I pay attention. I'm not spying on people or judging people, but I definitely am noticing if I was just on a road trip with my older daughter, and I certainly paid attention to parents in restaurants or things, kind of just what's happening. And my daughter, I said something about, oh, I wish I could go help them, but I know that would be weird at a restaurant. And she said, why don't you do a podcast on traveling with kids or going out to eat with kids? I'm like, oh, good idea. So it's stuff like that. It's just, we want to be helpful. And I think as much as you and I also feel stress of being a parent, because it's high stakes. You want to get it right. It's the most important thing in your life. But we also know a little bit more about when to let ourselves off the hook or what matters the most. And we just want to gift that to other people.
Yes, that was actually the reason. I'm not sure if I've ever told you this, Rachel. One of the reasons I went into this as my career path. It's kind of a weird career path in that I thought initially when I was in my early 20s that I wanted to be an educator, a classroom teacher. And then when I started working in a childcare center, I was in a toddler room. My favorite part of the day was pickup time. The families would come and I would be excited to talk to the other adult about their kid. It was like, you're not going to believe this. She was doing pretend play today. This is such a big deal. Let me tell you why this is such a huge milestone for your kid. Yeah. And they would be excited and I would be excited. I felt like I had done this. I had given them a little gift about their child. So that's when I really started getting interested in talking to adults about kids.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Another question we get from our listeners and from folks around Bright Horizons whenever whenever I mention, I've got to record a new episode with Rachel next week, people say, how do you guys develop the content for your episodes? How do you actually decide what to say on the air?
Yeah, I mean, we are hopefully we're doing we are doing what we are doing on the podcast. We're doing it right now, is we're just talking to each other about the topic and sharing stories about the topic. But it starts with a deep level of knowledge about what's going on with children in terms of their development, especially brain development, and we check our work. We don't say, oh, we learned about this 10 years ago, and so we're just going to talk about it. We go back to the research and say, are we still right? Is there anything new about this that would be important for families to know? Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we should know to inform our own guidance and the way we're thinking about it? So we do that deep level of research, and then we think about, okay, how does this make sense? Why is this important? Each of us sort of like, oh, I remember when my daughter did that, or we just start to relate to it and make sense of it. But it's not just off the top of our head superficial content, because we want all the listeners to feel a real confident trust in what we're sharing is what the research is telling us about child and brain development.
Yep, absolutely. And that's how we do everything at Bright Horizons. It's all based in what's best for kids.
Right. The science of early learning and brain development is informing everything we do. The science of learning is informing how we support teachers and leaders and family development too. So we are big research science nerds when it comes to development. And like you said, there's some pretty cool stuff. Like the example of a child being able to do imaginary play, that is a huge outcome that you can see. And we know behind the scenes, all the things that means their brain had to achieve and all the development that happened behind it. So we try to pair that excitement and fun and joy of childhood, and there is so much joy in being a parent, and to bring that to everyone and laugh about it and have fun about it and enjoy it, but also with the real sophistication behind it. Someone recently at a conference I went to said early childhood is the new rocket science. I'm like, yes, I'm going to keep quoting that like I'm doing right here, because it's that consequential and it's that sophisticated and that consequential. But the good news, before I scare anyone, is that there's like a lot of, it's pretty easy to get right in just nurturing, loving care and joy and having fun with your kids and celebrating childhood. And so I think that's really what we try to balance those things when we're developing the content, keep all of that in mind at once.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's how we do it. Okay, another question. Do you have any funny behind the scene moments you can share with the audience?
I mean, when we first started doing this, it was before the pandemic. So we were doing it live. We didn't really know what we were doing. We had microphones in a room together. We were, who should talk when, and we were kind of stumbling through that a little bit. I remember that then we went to pandemic mode and we started doing it virtually, and we were talking about recording ourselves, something sort of like, doing it on screen live, because someone wanted us to do it like that. But then I was nervous because I go off and tell stories and get on a tangent. So I wanted some notes in front of me, but I wanted to make sure I was looking at the camera. And this is before I had all the 3 years of practice that I've had now doing that. So I put my iPhone on my screen with just a couple notes, and I used painter's tape and wrapped it around my monitor so it wouldn't fall down, so I wouldn't wreck the screen. And one of my kids came in and took a picture, and they're like, "What? This is
like, surely there's a better way to do this. There's a better way to do that."
Exactly. I was just trying to make it work. How about you? Do you have any
my funniest was when you had just hired me, Rachel, and I had trained up, and Ruth had trained me. Ruth retired. It was my first Teach, Play, Love episode. I was very nervous because you and I didn't know each other very well. So we didn't have much chemistry yet. I think we do now. And I was at home. It was the pandemic. It was 2020, or maybe very early 2021. And our producer said, do you have a podcasting microphone? And I did not yet have one. So she said, okay, do you have any kind of high quality microphone in your home? And so I went to my 12-year-old and I borrowed his gaming headset. So it was like that headset with the like mic that goes like here that he would use to play Minecraft, and he would talk to his friends. It was a pandemic, so he'd use it to socialize with his friends. And I was like, this is kind of silly. It's green, but like Rachel's not going to notice. And I'm super professional. I do my power pose. Okay. And then we start recording. And then I realize, oh no, there are LED lights on the earpiece. So every time I spoke, it was sensitive to sound. And it was like, wah, wah. And I was thinking, I've never felt less professional. This is so silly. Thankfully, Rachel, I know now that you have a very good sense of humor. So you thought it was pretty funny too.
Yeah, and it didn't even stay with me. I don't remember that, but also pandemic, like do the best you can. We were in that mode all the time, but that's funny. Yeah, if you did that now, I would definitely laugh
with me. Yes, yeah. I think I made some jokes about how I looked like an air traffic controller trying to do a podcast. It was just such an absurdly huge headset. It was just unnecessary. Okay, what would we like to see in the future for Teach, Play, Love? Well, let's go to 100 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. I would like it to help. I want parents to feel like it's helpful to them. I want parents to feel confident, and I want that now. So it's nothing different than I want in the future, but I want this to be something people look forward to and think, this is going to help me. This is going to solve a problem. I'm going to feel good about parenting. I'm going to feel more confident. I'm going to let go of some stress, and I have some tricks up my sleeve. I don't get to talk to a lot of listeners or get feedback from a lot of listeners, although we're hoping to change that a little bit. But I do have one, my brother, who is also not a parent of young children, but my brother is a listener. And so out of the blue, I'll get a text from him because he does a lot of driving. So he listens to it, and he'll make a comment about something we talked about on the podcast. I'm like, what is this about? And I'm like, oh, he just listened to the most recent episode. So I'd like more ways, and I'll let you share how we're thinking about doing this, but I'd like more ways to have listeners be able to connect with us and make sure we're getting the kind of content and topics that listeners are really interested in.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have a shared goal here, which is that we are trying to cut through the clutter, especially with social media. You can log on to whatever your favorite social media platform is and be inundated with parenting advice from all kinds of people in all kinds of places. And some of that is really wonderful. And some of it is not based on what's best for kids. It's not based on science, not evidence-based strategies and research. So we try to be a source of truth for you. So that's going to be a continued goal. And I'm excited because we are going to try, hopefully hopefully by this summer to have some kind of feature where listeners can call in and ask us questions that we will then be able to address. And I think that's going to be make it an even more dynamic podcast than it already is.
That's great. Yeah.
All right. Well, so I think we're almost out of time for our live stream. I just want to encourage folks to go ahead and listen to episode 50. It's on the importance of transitions. We've got some really exciting episodes coming out. The March episode will be up soon. It's on the importance of routines. And then we're going to have an episode coming up later in the spring about solo parenting, when you're the primary parent and doing it by yourself. We're going to have an episode on sibling rivalry coming out. We're going to have an episode, hopefully in time for summer travels, about how to travel with your kids. That's an experience.
Yeah. Like there's some real thoughtful child development stuff you can think about during those moments, and real practical. So let's just get through this stuff you can think about. You can do both of them at the same time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Rachel. Let's go for another 50 episodes.
Let's do it. Nice to talk to you once again, Claire.
Bye, Rachel.